Welcome to Surface Transform's investor presentation in September 2019. My name's Kevin Johnson. I'm the Chief Executive of Surface Transforms, and today I'm going to be presenting to you, and I've got my colleague Michael Cunningham, the CFO of the company, with me, and he'll be also presenting some of the slides. First slide up is normally the disclaimer, so we put that up first, and then I'm going to move on and start talking about the business, the company and the markets we deal with. So as an introduction, let's talk about our key markets, and that's the automotive, luxury and performance car market. Here I make a comparison between what we do, which is carbon ceramic brakes, and we manufacture those, compared to grey cast iron brakes. And if I talk about the benefits of swapping out a grey cast iron brake for a ceramic, first of all, it gives you better braking performance. And when I talk about braking performance, it's about consistent braking. And that's particularly when you're doing performance braking, where you see fade with a cast iron brake and you lose the brake pedal. With ceramics that doesn't happen, and therefore it's a benefit. The second benefit is really about weight reduction. And weight reduction is where we can save typically about 50% of the weight of the brake disc. Now that equates on a car to about 20-25 kilos of weight saving. Now that weight saving alone is very useful, but if it's an engineered in solution to the car, that weight is hanging off the car, and the chassis needs to hold on to that weight. So if you can engineer weight out of that and bring it back into the chassis, you end up saving about 100 kilos of weight, which is hugely significant for a car. It equates to about 5% of the car's weight. So that can improve handling, it can improve comfort and refinement, and it can also improve the emissions for the car as well in the efficiency. Then we can talk about extended life. In terms of life of the disc, we typically talk about the comparison between the ceramic and iron, where it can last up to 4 times the life of the iron disc. If you're doing very conservative driving, it will usually last the lifetime of the car. Now, then we can talk about the aesthetics and how it looks on the car. There's an image associated with ceramic brakes, and they're very high tech. They certainly don't corrode, so they don't look unsightly when they get rusty inside the wheel. They don't generate a significant amount of brake dust, so the alloy wheels keep their appearance. And they also are instantly recognizable. Normally, a ceramic brake is accompanied by a very brightly colored caliper inside the wheel. It's typically bright yellow or lime green or something like that. So anyone looking at a car will know straight away that they have a very high performance brake. And finally, there's the environmental benefits of ceramic brakes. And in this world today, we're talking about pollution. And that pollution is usually from car engines and also by brake discs and brake pads rubbing together. Using a ceramic brake rather than an iron rotor allows you to reduce that pollution by reducing the amount of brake dust that's generated. Now that we understand a little bit about ceramics, let's talk about the market that we service. And we normally define that market as a £2 billion market. And we define that market by saying cars that are typically above £75,000 in retail price will end up, we think, having a ceramic brake fitted on all 4 corners. Cars between 50 and 75,000 will typically have a ceramic brake fitted on the main braking axle. And when we add all that up and use a typical selling price that we think it'll end up, it's a £2 billion market. Now there is one de facto monopoly supplier currently supplying carbon ceramic brakes to the market, and there is a strong link there between that supplier and one of the OEMs. And they're well established. They currently have a turnover of about 140 million, and they make about 200,000 discs. So this is unusual for an automotive market in terms of having a supplier who has a monopoly supply, and it's almost unheard of. And so the OEMs in particular are trying to drive an alternative solution into that marketplace. And when you look around the world, there is really only one alternative that's credible, and that's Surface Transforms. And that's how we position ourselves to work with those OEs as customers, and in any case, if there's a tier 1 supplier, we'll work with those too. Now, talking about a £2 billion market is useful, but if you think about the penetration, we think our competitors penetrated that market about 5-6%. And in terms of our addressable market, we're working with customers today with a potential pipeline of contracts worth about £50 million a year. And that's focused primarily in the UK and in Germany. So with that potential market backdrop and that understanding of where the product replaces cast iron, our strategy as a business is to be a world-class manufacturer and engineering company that produces carbon ceramic brakes. Now, if I move on and talk a little bit about our premium product, we talk about our product, and here I'm comparing it to our competitors' carbon ceramic brake. And we consider it a premium product because it has superior thermal conductivity and its material strength is a lot stronger. And I'd use the analogy here when I'm talking about the comparison between the two materials. They are made up of the same things. They're made up of carbon, silicon carbide, but it's the way those materials are put together. So the analogy we use here is it's a difference between chipboard versus plywood. Our competitor gets lots of carbon fibre and chops it up into small pieces so that you can pour it into a mould, and then adds a resin, and then hot presses those together into a shape. We take long carbon fibres and literally knit those fibres together into a shape. So we retain the length of the fibre, and it's important to retain that length because that's what gives us the strength in the product. And then around those fibres we then add some carbon, but it's very organised graphitic carbon, and it's that organised graphitic carbon that then gives us not just the strength, but the thermal conductivity. Now those two material properties then translate to how the brake works in application. And when you compare apples with apples in terms of a competitor disc to ours, we see that the temperature it operates at can be 150 degrees cooler, and the strength of the product is significantly higher, so it will last even longer because unlike an iron brake, a ceramic brake doesn't wear out physically by losing its dimensional thickness. It wears out by loss of mass. And it's that loss of mass that weakens the material. So the stronger your material starts, the better off you are in terms of the lifetime of the product. Now, how our customers use those benefits is very much up to them. Some companies want to get a lower operating temperature, so go with a relatively big disc. Other companies are happy with the operating temperature, want to shrink the size and get an even bigger weight reduction. So they can tailor their applications using our product to get a superior performance, whether it be weight reduction, heat management, and so on. Now, moving on to where we are as a business today and our highlights. It really has been a transformational 15 months, in particular the last 3 months, where the company is now in possession of multi-year, multi-million pound revenue contracts. You know, those contracts approximate to about £20 million of order book, and we talk about that order book being in hand with OEM 5 and OEM 6 as our customers. We now have a roadmap that gets us to, and it's a contractual roadmap that will get us to EBITDA positive in mid-2020, and then profitability by 2022. And I'm going to talk a little bit about another OEM, OEM 3, and tell you a little bit about the testing, and that's showing improvements, but there's more to do, but we think we can get there. Now, as I said, it's been a transformational, particularly last 3 months, and I want to talk about some of the contracts we have. The first being an existing contract with Aston Martin for the Valkyrie. Now, we are a Tier 2 supplier in this situation where we supply to a Tier 1 system integrator, and that particular program is worth about £2 million in revenue to us, and it will be spread over a series production of about 18 months. Now, we were expecting that to start in 2019, and it still will. We were hoping it would start in the middle of the year, but it should start before the end of this year. And there is some additional revenue, about £500,000, for a track pack option, where the particular customer that are buying these cars can upgrade, if you like, for a track day and have a special aerodynamics package put on, and also have an even higher performing carbon ceramic disc. So we see another £500,000 revenue alongside the two. Now I want to talk about a new contract we announced just a couple of months ago with an OEM 6. Again, here we're a Tier 2 supplier to a Tier 1 who's the system integrator, and the start production for this will follow on, if you like, from our existing contracts and start in 2021. It'll be installed on all 4 corners, so both axles of the car will have it on. And the revenues to us in terms of a program, we talk about the series revenues being about 5 million, and then when we add on top our development revenue, it comes to about 6 million in total. And when we look at the annualized revenue in terms of our run rate, it works out to be 1.8 million per annum. Continuing the theme on contracts, we also work with a company called OEM 5, and we've announced a new contract with them in the last couple of months. Here, it's slightly different. We work with them as a Tier 1 supplier, and again, we see this as an introduction that will happen in 2021. So it has similar timing to the OEM 6 new contract. The difference here is it'll be an option on a saloon car, and it'll be on the main braking axle. However, there's a larger volume for this particular contract, and the option rate will mean that it's a significant revenue to the company. The volume in terms of revenue from the program is estimated at about 12 million euros. And again, if I look at the annualized run rate of that revenue, it comes out to be 2 million euros per year. Now that'll happen in 2021, and it will continue to happen right through till 2026. And then it'll start to taper off as that model reaches the end of life. The final contract that we announced over the last couple of months with a company called Koenigsegg, who is also an existing customer, sorry. We announced the new Jesco model, and that's about a 150 car model, and it's worth about £1 million to us. So not as big as the other two, but still important. And it's a 3-year program, and that should start next year. So the series production is in 2020. Now, in terms of how useful those new contract announcements are, I'd like to then take you through what we call our automotive contract pipeline and roadmap. Something I don't talk about in the presentation is we already have an existing business with near OEM and retrofit business. Now, near OEMs to us are companies and vehicle manufacturers that make, say, up to 50 cars a year. And retrofit business for us is where people actually replace their existing brakes, whether it be an iron brake or an existing ceramic brake, and put an ST upgrade kit on it. So we offer kits for Porsche, Ferrari, McLarens, Nissan GTRs and such cars. And that business to us is worth about £1 million, £1.5 million per year, and it's recurring every year. So that's our bedrock of revenue today. Then we can add to that the Valkyrie. And as I said, the revenues from the series production there is going to start towards the end of this year, and it'll run through 2020 and into 2021. And the run rate for that is about 1.5 million per annum. Then if we add the new contracts we've just announced with OEM 6, with series supply happening in 2021, we think that's 1.8 million per annum. And for OEM 5, similarly, with series supply in 2021, that's also 1.8 million per annum. And the Koenigsegg, as we said, is relatively modest at 0.3, but that'll start to occur in 2020, 21 and 22. When we add up those numbers, we can start to generate revenues, recurring revenues over multi-years, just circa about 6 million, just under 6 million. And that's important to us because above 5 million, we start to become profitable. Now, how do we support those new contracts? Well, let's talk a little bit about our operational activities. And firstly, I'd like to talk to you about our small volume production cell, our SVP cell. Now that supports our existing business with near OEMs, retrofit, and it'll also do the Valkyrie. And that's capable, it has a capacity of 4.5 million per annum. So it'll cover those very nicely, and there's a little bit of headroom there should we see any growth coming through from the near OEM and retrofit business. It's important we talk about cost reduction. We understand our pricing very, very well. That's been agreed with all these contracts, and we know how that pricing is going to develop. So to maintain good margins, it's about ensuring we have the right costs. And we've been working on a cost reduction program over the last 5 years. And the target there was to reduce the cost by half. And I'm pleased to report that that's gone very, very well. And we'll see that reduction in full happen when we put our new capacity in place for our OEM 1 production cell. Now, it doesn't end there for cost reduction. As we've been putting in that cell, we recognised and we've identified another series of projects we can complete, and then that will drive our cost reduction going forward in the future. It's not something we're delivering on now, but we expect to have that planned out and incorporated for our future business. Let's talk, the other key measure is our supply chain. And we've worked very hard on developing our supply chain. It's a fully integrated manufacturing process for our ceramic rotor. We use a supply chain for our metal parts, but we're very pleased to say that we now have a secure supply chain, particularly for the raw material. And we are now actively working with our suppliers for the metal parts to strengthen those supply chain areas as well. And then finally, something that our customers always ask about and look for is the quality and environmental certifications. We were pleased to add the environmental certification this year, which is 14001, and we maintain our certifications for quality, whether it be ISO 9000 or IATF 16949. Now if I move on to talk about our work on building more capacity, we call that capacity OEM Cell One. That's going to be capable of generating about £12 million per annum in terms of its capacity. And the bulk of the work is always focused around our processes, which are furnace-based. Those furnaces now, I'm pleased to say, all are now installed, so we're well over 80 to 90% complete in terms of the installation. And it's now about bringing it operational towards the end of this year in 2019. And we'll introduce that capacity in 2 phases, the first being this year, and then that will be phased through into 2020 where we'll see the full capacity available. It's important here to reference that that cell is modular. We've designed it to be modular so that we can replicate it. Because the facility we have, we're very fortunate in the facility is much bigger, and we can add more modules to that facility. So we think we can fit up to 5 modules. So we talk about having an expandable plant that will service our addressable market, which, as we've said, is £50 million per annum. Now, to build new cells, we think it's about £10 million, and we talk about the payback for the investment about 18 million. The other key point we make here is that the timeline to make a new cell, we think is about 18 months, and normally we see visibility of new contracts before series supply, and that's about 24 months. So the decision points in terms of investment in further capacity are well within the timeline of new contracts. Now I'd like to move on, and now we've talked about the operational activities and how they link to the contracts, talk a little bit more about future development. If I go back to OEM 5, we're very pleased to have that new contract, but what it really means is that product is now part of the parts bin, and they're the words our customer use. Once the product is approved and part of the parts bin, the intention from that OEM and from ourselves is to then be able to select that product from the parts bin and apply it to multiple models over multiple years. And we're working actively with our customer, and the discussions are quite detailed about what future models it'll be on. Not only that, we've already agreed a pricing matrix which links those models and volumes together so that we know exactly how that will happen in terms of the commercial deal. The key for us really now is that there is potential for substantial growth, and there's a growing demand from our customer for our carbon ceramic brakes. And the key really is about us being a good supplier. They want to see us maintain our supplier status with them, and they want to see us deliver and make sure we have that relationship going forward so that they can continue to put our brakes on future models. Thinking about this similarly with OEM 6, we've already seen that we've announced a new contract with OEM 6, and I can say we're already in detailed discussions about what future models as a tier 2 supplier there as well. And we expect again that as we move forward, the next model will have higher volumes and a longer series in terms of its potential for us as a business. We expect there some significant growth, and again, there's a demand for our carbon ceramic brake disc. Right, now moving on in terms of development with another customer, OEM 3, and we define OEM 3 as the lead for a group of OEMs which cover in our limited OEM 2 and 4. OEM 3's been told they're the lead, so they work with us very closely to approve the product, and they're the ones who can deliver in terms of saying that your ceramic brake is part of their parts bin. There's a desire from this customer, just like there has been with all the other OEMs, to generate that alternative supply, and it's been our job to work with them and try and understand what their requirements are. They have windows for opportunity for selection regularly, and there are opportunities for selection in 2019 and 2020. We have one outstanding requirement in terms of the product that we have to deliver before we can be selected, and that relates to an environmental salt spray test. Now, we've worked on this for a number of years, and we've been steadily improving. It's fair to say that we are continue to work on it, and I describe the status right now as improving but not quite there. We think we're very close. We can achieve the result, but we need to achieve it with a statistical sample in the right way, with the right specification and the right range, and that's what we're working on to deliver. And the hope is, if we can do that, we can then be available for selection with OEM 3 for their future models. And finally, just on the development, talking about the aircraft. We don't talk about this that much these days, but we've worked on aircraft for many, many years, and in particular US military aircraft. Now, where we are with that is we're not doing very much at the minute. We're waiting for the airframe manufacturer and the US government to release funds and the program so that it can go forward. The product's being developed, and ourselves and the landing gear supplier, our customer, are in a holding pattern really. And the moment it's released, we will take advantage of that with the customer and go forward. The uncertainty for us is we're not sure when that will happen, but once it does, it's worth to us about 1.5 million. Very, very good margins here as well. And it's also a very, very long lifetime product. So this could last 20, 30, 40 years once we're on. So we do want it, but the relevance to us has probably become less as we've had new contract announcements, but it's there and we want to win it. Okay, I'll hand over to Michael now and he'll take you through the financials.
Okay, focusing on the figures that we've released recently. Sales in the year for ended May 2019 were down from the previous year at £1 million, primarily due to delayed revenues. At this point, those are mostly returned, and we are quite happy that it was due to a timing issue. In the year, our loss after tax reduced from 1.8 to 2.1 million, and that is very much due to the reduced sales and to a reduced gross margin, which was due to the sales mix that also occurred in the year. Administrative and research costs have increased from 3.1 to 3.6 million. As Kevin said, we've had significant R&D expenditure trying to achieve the salt spray test on OEM 3, and we've also delivered extensive expenditure to supply the product to OEM 5. What we've also had during the year is improved production efficiencies, and what that's meant is our headcount has remained fairly static, and through natural wastage within the production operation, we have ended up strengthening our team with automotive specialists within our management team, and expanding the engineering team to help deliver on the research and development. And in addition, we had there's a non-cash element of share-based payments, which has increased. Most of that was due to a volatility adjustment last year. Net cash used in operations in the year has stayed flat at 2.2 million. Our inventories increased to 1.2, again a function of the delayed revenues earlier in the year. We see this very much as a peak and now unwinding in the coming year. Our debtors have increased from 0.8 to 0.9 million. 400,000 of that is due to accrued R&D tax credit, but our underlying trade debtors have reduced by approximately 300,000. At the end of the year, we had cash of 1.9 million. We had 2 fundraisers which delivered about 3.4 million in the year. We still expect an R&D tax credit of more than 0.4 million post year end. We expect our inventory position to unwind by the 300,000, and we believe we have sufficient cash headroom to take us to profitability in 2022. Some events that have impacted both this year's accounts and the coming accounting period is, as most companies in the UK, IFRS 16 on leases is having an impact. We have one operating lease of any note, which is our property lease. This will have probably a 200,000 expense movement from expenses into depreciation and interest. There's no other significant operating leases that will affect the P&L. In previous years, the board has attempted to be really prudent with how we've approached R&D and have taken our tax credit on a cash receipt basis. And what we've found is that because we've been successful for so many years in succession, we have had to come to the agreement that we will now accrue. That means we've had a one-off improvement in the tax credit for this year of 400,000, which is the accrual previously mentioned. Looking at intangible assets, our development work up to this point, again, due to the board's prudence, we've always expensed this directly to the P&L. But as we now have contracts with suppliers, we're effectively out of research, and some of this will now end up being capitalised as an intangible asset and written down over the contract life. As a lot of the development work is funded by the customers themselves, we don't see the unfunded element as being particularly material, and so we don't see a huge impact to either P&L or to our balance sheet. One announcement that we've made very recently is a change to our year end. Our customers haven't really been focused on our year end because it's entry their year end. Every one of the large automotive OEMs has a calendar year, and our year end wasn't even aligned with a quarter end. This left us very open to volatility, both from the OEMs and from the retrofit market, which we fall right in the middle of. That year end falls right in the middle of the race season, so we were very open to it. One unexpected benefit is that we will have a slight acceleration of cash for the R&D tax credit for the 7-month period ending December 2019. The company expects to have a capital markets day on the 30th of October for retail investors, and at the Knowsley facility. That will be announced and that you'll be able to attend. And then finally, on the subject of Brexit, the company currently sees that our only major European customer will begin production more than 12 months after the current introduction of Brexit. Should that be a disorderly situation, we would hope that after the 12-month period we'd be in a position to identify the correct routes to transfer product into Europe, but the company's position has always been that in order to meet just in time to our customers, should it be necessary, we would create a warehousing situation close to the customer's location and hold a buffer stock at that point. We believe we're comfortable with the situation with Brexit.
Okay, let me try and summarise then what the whole presentation was about. We announced a series of contract wins with OEM 6, OEM 5 and Koenigsegg in the last few months, which truly are transformational. They translate into a solid contract roadmap now with multi-year recurring revenues, starting with the Valkyrie in 2019, then moving on in 2020 with Koenigsegg, and then moving into OEM 6 and OEM 5 in 2021. And it's those that will take us through EBITDA positive and then into profitability in 2022. Now, from an operational perspective, the activities we've been running to support those contracts relate to our small volume cell, the SVP, and we've got ample capacity in there to support our near OEMs, retrofit and Valkyrie business. And our OEM 1 cell capacity is coming on stream and operational in 2019 with a phased capacity introduction, which will happen through 19 and 2020. So we're in good shape, and it's worth saying the capacity of both of those then gets us 16.5 million. So with the contracts we've got, which is around about 6 million, we've got headroom there that we can use for new contracts. Gross margin is secure in terms of our pricing's agreed, and we're very comfortable with our cost reduction program, and we believe there's more to come. So in terms of future development, we've got OEM 5, and we've put together the pricing model there. That's for future models and obviously future business. We are talking with OEM 6 about their as a tier 2 with their future models, and for OEM 3 the key there is to be successful in achieving the environmental salt spray test, and then if we do that, we're open for selection in 2019 and 2020 for their windows. And that's it. So I thank you for watching.